So thank you so much all for joining us again. We've had such amazing feedback from the PanelCast, and sorry that we weren't with you last week. We did need a bit of a break just to sort of get our families and business in order. So just some housekeeping. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat section. If you click on that, it'll actually give you an option to be able to give us questions throughout the night. So if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to say hi or give questions, and I'll make notes and we'll go over them at the end. To introduce myself, I'm Hayley Mason. I'm the MD of an events agency based in Sydney, Australia. We formed this idea, so my business partner CT is on the line. We formed this idea because we wanted to bring as many voices as possible from the greater marketing landscape and get everyone together as a community and start talking about how we can create a positive mindset moving forward. Our purpose is to shift mindsets for a positive change, specifically within the sports marketing, events, and entertainment industries. So our largest takeout for everyone that we want to come out of this over the next 6, 12 to 18 months is how to transition your current events or brand activations into this new era that we are about to go into. If you want to have a look at our previous PanelCast, please go onto our Facebook page or our Facebook group, which is the Shift PanelCast. Today, we're going to be looking at the technology and content industries in relating to igniting innovation. I think it's important to highlight that our intention isn't to, at the end of this PanelCast, go, oh, that's the most amazing product that we've come up with between the four of us, or, you know, between everyone here. It's actually just about sparking some excitement and ideas within the people watching so that they can utilize this and use it within your own brands and your own business. And with regards to technology, we're not also going to be talking about lasers and spaceships and hoverboards. It's about what tech can provide us today. Sorry, Duncan. And also how the general population have embraced technology and how we can use that moving forward within our industries. So first off, we have C. Do you want to say hi, CT? That's CT there. He's the events and sports marketing expert specializing in innovation and creativity. CT's got 20 years experience in the agency and brand side as a creative director and event producer. Next, we have Christie Poulos. Hey, Christie. Christie is a marketing and creative exec, client director for Gennaro and founder of Jump Shot TV. Christie's worked as head of content for Red Bull and creative services director at King Content, and she's actually the most knowledgeable person that I know about content. So I'm really excited to have Christie on. And then we also have Duncan McIntyre. So Duncan's all the way from New York. He got up at 5:30 in his morning to join us and share his experience with us. So Duncan is the managing director for Mesh, who's a New York-based tech company specializing in digital matrix for brands and events. So Mesh has worked with F1, NASCAR, Live Nation, Nike, London Marathon, and as an Aussie living in the US, he's able to translate over to us what he learned and his experiences.
Constantly translating, yeah.
So as I said before, we've had an incredible feedback from everyone who's ever either watched it on LinkedIn or on Facebook or they've come on live. And one of the questions that kept coming up was, how do you create and innovate? And so I'm going to start that first question off and throw it to CT, because as our creative director, I feel like that's, it is a really important question. And is it just, do you just sit down and suddenly start innovating?
Absolutely. Yep. That's the $1 billion question. I just hit the magic innovation button. and go from there. Yeah, look, I think, and thank you, and thanks for coming, everyone. Yeah, like all creativity, innovation is a process. It's not a sit down innovate. It's a process, and it's about identifying a need or a problem, and it's about looking around at other markets. It's about looking at trends within the industry, and it's about looking about what's worked in the past, and what hasn't worked in the past, and why hasn't it worked in the past. So I think it's a combination of this process. And look, something I heard the other day that really resonated with me, and I think it fits here, was the problem that you give yourself is the problem that you will solve. So let me say that again. So the problem that you give yourself is the problem that you will solve. So in essence, what we're talking about is it's about identifying and solving a problem, possibly one no one even knew that was a problem. So sometimes innovative products come through, or and people will wonder how they ever lived their life without them. So I think that's the sort of thing that we're looking for, and it's about a process.
Cool. And I think that with that is looking at other industries or other people, or looking at your surroundings for inspiration.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Duncan, can you tell us a quick overview about Mesh and the technology that you use?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely resonate with that sentiment, Chris, in terms of the collaborative process and kind of coming up with solving problems. So our two products, we have two products. One's an analytics product, which collects passive and anonymous data at events to understand behavior. So we can do dwell times, visitor metrics, and kind of a whole suite of other metrics through that analytics product that we can dive deeper into a little bit later on. And then the research product, which is a data collection tool. So an on-site data collection tool where you can collect deeper data from consumers as well.
Cool. So the brands and events that you've worked with, how have they used that?
So we kind of have, brand clients like Michelin, Diageo's, Johnny Walker, some of their different brands through their portfolio, kind of using the event for consistency across their events. So again, kind of speaking to there was a problem in the industry in terms of metrics. It was a little bit subjective in terms of how you collect data at events, and through this passive means, we're able to create some consistency for brands. Doing different events in different environments, we can compare those different environments with these metrics. And then at an event level, you mentioned London Marathon. Formula One's a sort of a 3-year client of ours as well. Live Nation, NASCAR. Those guys are kind of looking at an event level, so kind of a user experience piece for themselves. That might be sort of around food and beverage or merchandise, making sure the assets are in the right place around the event. Or down to the partner level with those guys as well, and just making sure they're maximizing partner value. Again, making sure those assets are in the right place, being able to provide a deeper suite of metrics. And most of our clients kind of feed these data points into a bigger business intelligence platform that they use themselves, or methodology that they use themselves. So we're not a silver bullet by any stretch, and certainly some of what Christie does in terms of metrics around content and kind of the online world certainly kind of feeds into that as well. So just creating some consistency around brand events, and then kind of at the event level being able to provide a deeper suite of data there as well.
So you have a massive insight into consumer behavior, essentially around every part of the event. So
basically.
If
it's accurate down to 10 feet or 3 meters for Australians translating.
Right. Thank you for the translation. So with consumer behavior, obviously we saw a lot of a certain type of consumer behavior 3-6 months ago. I mean, your data would go back to what, 4 or 5 years. How do you, is that correct?
No, so our data is passive and anonymous, so it's really specific to people at the event. We do have a unique identifier for a specific device, so we do some year-on-year stuff, so we can tell if the same devices are at the same event year on year. But in terms of kind of pulling that data set and kind of looking at history or anything like that, that's kind of not GDPR compliant. So that's, it's opt-in sort of stuff where you have to, when you're looking at those data sets, which is probably more Christie's world again, in terms of consumers kind of, knowing what they're doing with their data and opting in, and then kind of looking at the history of the data.
Cool, thank you.
But yeah, that's where we kind of, the year-on-year stuff is really interesting, actually, kind of looking at that. So.
And then, so how do you see that changing, or do you see that changing in the next 12 to 18 months of what consumers, what their behavior is going to be at events? Because obviously there's going to be social distancing in place, and the old norm not might be the new norm of how they walk around an event.
Yeah, definitely. I think, more than ever, it's important, to see the differences, obviously, kind of previous to now, of how people are behaving at events. And we don't and the different kind of things that are going to be put into events in terms of how people are allowed to interact. But we certainly think it's more than ever important now to understand those differences in behaviour, see where people are spending their time, and how you interact with them. With brands and agencies are going to be coming up with all sorts of different new ways to try and interact with consumers at events, and having the metrics to understand what's actually working, what's not, and being able to pivot on that is going to be more important than ever.
Christie, obviously where Duncan works is within the tech event space, but in the content space, what kind of technologies are you seeing that have helped your industry and kept you relevant? Not you specifically, but kept content relevant.
Facelifts, Botox, no. I think with technology there's a lot of individual and interesting technology in the content and communication space. I think more broadly, technology has really driven a lot of change in our industry in the last 10 years. Everything from how we go about creating content, using technology to actually facilitate a whole new way of creating content, which is a little bit what we do at Genero, where I work now, where we have a technology platform which actually connects creatives with clients all over the world. So any client can work with any creative in any part of the world to develop almost any type of creative content. And so, I guess facilitating a whole new way of connecting and collaborating, where you don't have to be in the same room, in the same city, in the same country, which is super relevant right now, obviously.
Sure.
But there's also new ways to promote content. Technology is driving some really interesting new ways of getting your own content out there, whether it's through influencers at scale or, new social channels and platforms like TikTok, for example. And new ways to find audiences, whether it's programmatically or through all these burgeoning digital channels, and even just technology is helping us figure out what content to create and when. So there's really no part of what we do that's untouched by it, and it's changing just all the time. It's amazing. I started in video content before YouTube, so
I was going to ask,
different then.
Why did you get why did you get into content?
I kind of, like all of my decisions in life, I just, when you talk about passive and anonymous, I just kind of flopped from one thing to another. But I started in communications, PR, and just very quickly realized that if you had a really good story to tell, your job was a lot easier. So I kind of just chased those stories into working in action sports for a long time, where, you know, you couldn't get a journo to turn up to an event, so you'd have to create the content for them yourself. And then that led me to Red Bull, where kind of communications and action sports and content kind of collided in this sort of crazy maelstrom of stuff. But like I said, I was there, you know, quite early in the sort of branded content evolution, when there was no such thing as Facebook or YouTube, and we all thought MySpace was amazing. So
I remember those days.
I saw an artist has done something on
updating your
MySpace.
profile. Yeah, so obviously, you know, things have changed. Just, you know, there's light years ahead, or you know, but who knows where it's going to be in another 10 years.
Well, since all this has happened, that we've all, you know, gone into our homes and we've started connecting more so on Zoom, really. How have you seen the content world change? And do you think, since this all began, what do you think is going to be really important for producing content in the future?
Yeah, look, obviously there's the logistical challenges that this kind of situation is posing to our clients, and our clients are mostly brands, where they've suddenly just, you know, where they're trying to figure out now how do they actually continue to move forward and create content experiences. So how do we, you know, in a world where social distancing and legal requirements mean you can't have a full-size shoot, how can you create content? What are the different ways of doing it? And so we're, you know, I guess that's one of the advantages for our business, is that we're able to connect with a really wide range of creative businesses who have lots of different opportunities, whether geographically they're more free to do things, or whether as simple as, you know, they know a really cute baby who can be featured in the next Huggies campaign. So having that scale really helps to find those interesting loopholes, but also there's lots of other ways to create content, which are, you know, sort of joke that the animation community, who are, you know, typically the quiet achievers of content, a lot less flashy and loud than your advertising production teams, but they're kind of like the, you know, on the front line now, because there's so much that can be done in animation and motion graphics, and a lot of what we're doing for clients right now is optimizing and you know, reimagining existing assets. And there's some brands who are doing some really cool stuff with that in that area. I don't know if you guys saw the Budweiser WhatsApp reboot from the UK, and just taking the audio and redoing that.
If anyone hasn't seen the Budweiser, can you just explain to them quickly what that was?
I'll just act that for you.
This is how it went. What's up? Go, Duncan.
If everyone, actually, that's not true. Some of you are probably too young to know the original WhatsApp campaign, but, you know, the ultimate earworm that made us all want to kill ourselves eventually. But they've basically taken the exact same ad. This is just in the UK. I believe in the US they're actually reproducing the ad with modern celebrities. But they took the old ad in the UK and just changed the audio and the message as well. And I think that's where brands are really having to pivot in these times and find a new way of talking and offering value. And this was all about mental health, checking in on your mates. And they gave it this kind of lockdown twist that just made sense in this environment. And, you know, it's a fantastic idea. Executionally very simple, probably not that expensive, but getting it right would have been a challenge. Yeah. But it's a great example of a client figuring out how to move through these crazy times.
And we're seeing a lot of raw content, right? So for example, us having this chat, and then we put it on tomorrow on Facebook and LinkedIn, and it's raw. We might cut out the beginning when we start, and then we put a logo on the back, and that's it done. Is that going to affect the future of content?
Look, I think that it's just another brick in the wall is the wrong expression. It's another step on the ladder towards the full democratization of content. I think we've been seeing that for a really long time. You know, that really it sort of all started with this thing. It kind of just put content in the hands of everyone, and so that's a long-term trend. And I think this is just going to give it a really massive shove forward, where clients and businesses were perhaps a little nervous about lo-fi production for essential content. They'll probably be a lot more relaxed about that now. And I think that audiences' expectations will be different. You know, we're now, we accept this is a way of delivering really important information. I don't think, I hope not. I don't think it'll be a matter of replacing, you know, highly produced content. I think it's going to be more about increasing the amount of content, and video in particular, I imagine, will probably be just driven even more by this. But I do think there's a role for the creative industries to conceptualize and create the really sort of cream of the crop stuff that's going to give people, you know, the most value on average.
It's probably the same in the events world, I would say, as well. You know, there's so many online events going on, or people having their own smaller community events, but actually to do a high production event, it's probably going to take it to that next level, because the general population will be like, oh, well, you know, it's quite easy. We can just organize this, or we can do this. But actually, to make it that top line, it's still going to need professionals to do it.
They're going to forget about the toilets.
Yeah. No one ever forgets about the toilets. It's always the thing about the toilet.
That's the difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
definitely.
Sorry, you go, Chris.
No,
I was going to say, I think maybe we're accepting of the rawness at the moment, because we're accepting that this is the situation that we're currently in, and it's what we can do at the moment. But I think you're 100% right, and it's the same for events that people are dying to get out and dying to get to an event, to do something, to experience something that's special. And I think it'll be, you know, it's the same sort of thought in the content space as well.
I just think what I'm wondering is, you know, now we've kind of peeked under the skirts of business and celebrity. Like, we've kind of seen into everyone's houses.
Yeah.
I just can't get used to that. Like, that's what I'm wondering about, is will the stories that we tell and the way that we present ourselves, in the way that, you know, influencers communicate, will that kind of peel back and become a little bit more real? I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like, we're just seeing a lot more than we used to see, and maybe we won't want to go back.
Yeah, 100%.
Duncan, your company is clearly an innovative tech company. Do you feel kind of similar in that respect of, like, how do you keep ahead of the game? Because people have got time to pause right now and come up with new technology, or maybe technology is catching up. I'm not quite sure how it goes, but how do you guys keep ahead of the game?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're lucky to have a really good suite of clients. So, you know, sort of back to what Chris said at the beginning of the call was, you know, it's a collaborative process, and a lot of that, and finding those problems to kind of solve often comes through doing different things. And we've certainly dug up some of those challenges with our clients. You know, London Marathon's a good example of kind of, it was an egress kind of problem with them, and being able to kind of solve that problem with them, so that they could then have more people kind of come to their event. So those sorts of challenges kind of come up with our clients, and being able to kind of solve those and kind of adapt our, you know, data, or look at the data in a different way. Obviously, we have a huge set of data collecting kind of pings from phones with our technology, so we're able to kind of take that data set in a lot of different ways, and so that's where innovation for us comes kind of at a product level. But outside of that, it's just, you know, keeping ahead of, you know, industry trends, and as Chris said again at the beginning, it's kind of looking at those trends, seeing what works, what doesn't. I've kind of got a personal thing myself. I just kind of, you know, like to find problems, or problems find me. So you know, I just
hey, that's the start of innovation, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, right?
It
you
is,
know,
100%.
so we used to just call ourselves problem solvers, you know, running around. So
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. So
Essentially.
Duncan, we've actually had a question in from Sam. He said, "Hey, Duncan, Australians have historically," sorry, she said, I think, Australians have historically been pretty scared by big data being used to track them. So much so that when you send an SMS that reads, "Welcome back to something stadium," they think Big Brother is too close. Is this reaction the same in other markets, or are people more open?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Sam, thanks for the question, and hi down there. Nice to see you online. Our products are deliberately built anonymously and passively because of that Big Brother. And yes, we've done some research here recently, looking at people's concerns on privacy of data, and we've had a few clients come to us with, a lot of the time app data will give them the information, but people are now getting that choice to opt out of location data through apps. So there's been a huge drop off in terms of sharing private data through apps, and so our products are deliberately kind of built to be passive and anonymous, so that we're not doing those sorts of invasive things. Our other the data collection tool is an opt-in kind of closed tool, so we can it's fully personal data. So yeah, the world is certainly moving away from Big Brother. It's opt-in. It's probably still a little bit TBD in terms of where that settles, where the dust settles there. I think as long as people know where their data's been used, I think most of us are reasonably comfortable.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going off what you're saying there, just to sort of circle back on it. Like the technology you're using there is over the years we've had this this issue of trying to work out how to measure activations, or how to understand these things and measure them without affecting their general flow, like the normal use. And I guess the way that you're doing it is in a way that is not really interacting with people in a way, so it's not affecting the final result. So you're getting that really, you're getting good data that's coming back through that people can really use. It's really powerful.
And that's it in any research, is sort of trying to remain as peripheral as possible, and you're not impacted. Someone's been made to do something to then get the metrics. You're very specifically kind of,
and it changes the dynamic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Cool, thank you. Sorry, I'm having some internet issues, so sorry if I look really confused.
Back to you, Hayley. Sorry, I forgot to touch. Back to you, Hayley.
I'm going to just go on to another question that we did have in. Christie, this is mostly for you. So events often rely on participation numbers to offset costs. Restrictions on the way events may function for the coming months that may change the formula around that. How would you encourage scalability from your experience working in the event space and using content?
Look, I've always been a bit, I guess, surprised that, and I'm obviously not talking about those, gigantic events, but even so, I think every really great event is an event for the people that attend, and it's also an experience for people who don't attend. So, anything like Formula One or whatever, they're content production machines, really. And I think that, Red Bull, even unless it was a really massively niche event, and even then we wanted that community to know about it, we'd spend a lot of time, as much time, working out how we were going to extend that event out into the world before, during and after, whether it's using content in advance to promote it, but then also using that content just to tell people it's on and give them an experience even if they can't go, or live streaming, and obviously packaged content after the fact. And I'm not talking about a sort of 3-minute highlight video that tells you with music playing and people drinking at the bar. Like, I'm afraid that's kind of often that's the event content that we see, but actually designing it into the event experience from scratch, when putting it all together to yield really interesting content outcomes, and just giving more people an experience of that. Because events are great at generating content. They're a fantastic source of content. But sometimes a bit of an afterthought, I think. And perhaps now, in order to to really drive that ROI for these events, if you can't get 10,000 people through, if you can only get 2,500 people through, how are you going to deliver that much value to your clients and to the audience as well, who can't go?
Yeah, totally agree. I'm not sure whether, we've all known about this, but whether it's been used in the correct way, or whether it could be utilized more coming out of social distancing. Do you agree, CT?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you know, in the immediate future, in terms of how content can be used in events and you know, maybe will be used in the future, I think in the immediate future, it's going to be really important for the communication of the restrictions, and you know, that it's firstly that it's a safe to attend. You know, that's going to have a massive effect on the events and on ticket sales and things. You know, also about what to do when you do attend and what to expect. You know, the importance of adhering or following the rules that have been set. You know, and if not, those are the sorts of things that maybe, you know, we might be risking being shut down, and maybe it's shutting down that event, or maybe it's shutting down future events in that series, or maybe it's shutting down the sport, or maybe it's shutting down all events. So we do have that responsibility in the immediate future, and obviously we don't want to dwell on that too much, but that is something that's going to be really important coming out of this. Probably beyond that, and exactly what Christie is touching on there, you know, leading brands have been pushing this for years, you know, and it's a real opportunity for events to look at how brands have been doing this in the past and also continue to do, you know, and use these ideas to extend their reach and their scalability, to enhance the live and at-home experience, and also to enhance the fan interaction overall.
And I think both Christie and Duncan, both of your products or assets within your businesses can actually work quite well together with that, right? So if you know what consumer behavior is like and where they are or what they like, you can direct your content towards them. So, you know, mixing and merging different
exactly.
markets.
Exactly. Yeah, we're sort of able to kind of profile a visitor based on kind of, you know, what they've done at the event, and often that behaviour is fed into, you know, back into an app for wayfinding, or, you know, fed across to, you know, someone like us in terms of here's the profile of people that came to this asset, and, you know, here's the other things that they liked around the event. So here's, you know, use that data to you know, feed into your other marketing tools.
Yeah, interesting. Christie, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned how content that you're developing isn't just about a 3-minute, 1 minute. It actually goes down to like 10-second.
Yeah, look, I mean that's just a trend we're seeing in general, and that's very much being driven by Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, and from a commercial perspective, I'm talking a lot about advertising content specifically, but definitely, again, that's something that's just changed so much, you know, since I started in video and content, and when we thought that, you know, really it was all about a, you know, half-hour TV show, that was the peak, and then, you know, if you did like maybe an 8-minute online video show, like that was better, and then everything else was just trailer content. But now it's very much like you are needing to give people content experiences in really short spaces of time, which means it's a lot easier to make content. I know everyone sort of talks about how difficult it is to squeeze a message into a short space of time, but it's still only 10 seconds of video. So there's really no excuse now not to use these sorts of channels and formats to promote and engage audiences and fans. Yeah, it's a bit of a game changer, really. And again, it's just driven by mobile. It's just how people want to consume content and experiences on mobile, and it's obviously pervasive, that change through pretty much every industry.
Where are you at the moment? Like, what brands or companies are you looking at for inspiration or ideas, or that is there any brands that have like triggered something in you to go, I want to create that, or I want to do this?
Yeah, look, I think there's right now, you know, in the sort of current environment, there's a few key ways that it's okay to be if you're a brand communicating, and it's, you know, it's very much like initially it was very much all around reassurance and education, around what's going on, why, you know, what we're doing as a business, how everything's going to be, and just generally creating a feeling of emotional well-being. And I think that there's some brands that are doing that really well, and, you know, I was calling out Woolworths, I think have done quite an interesting job through necessity. They had no choice. They could either sink or swim in this situation, but I think that they've really risen to the occasion and done a lot to not only look after their customers and their staff and make them feel safe, but kind of set the tone for how we're all operating as a society at the moment, which is an interesting sort of dynamic when a supermarket is telling you quite openly how to behave. Normally they just do it really subversively.
No, totally. I mean, my supermarket at one point, you could just walk in there and wipe down your own trolley. Then it got to the point where you couldn't walk in, you had to stand on a little dot, and then they'd count you in and someone was there cleaning your trolley, and I was like, oh shit, that's like, we're in serious mode. And then I think in the last few days they've relaxed that, so then I'm like, oh okay, cool, maybe we're relaxing now. And I watch the news every day, but for some reason I'm unconsciously following what Woolworths is telling me to do.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right, and I think that these big brands, they have a real responsibility to do that. And you know, I think it was Adam Ferrier said something about it, just the job to do is just to give that people that sense of everything's going to be okay. That's what people want. They want that from the world, and that's something that brands can do in some respects, you know, appropriately.
And I think also, events. Oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah, no, go on.
No, go.
Well, and I think the other areas like that seems to be okay is about offering some kind of value, which has really always been at the heart of content anyway. But also really now is the time to showcase your charitable work, your CSR, do something that helps people. So like the Budweiser example, you know, they turned their famous beer ad into a beer ad that talks about mental health, but don't be mistaken, it's still a beer ad. But it's a great way of balancing that. And and then there's also just brands and businesses, and I think everyone's trying to do this just to try and generate value amongst their communities and their fan base and their customer base. And, you know, whether it's trying to offer opportunity, it's making donations on behalf of or whatnot. And so there's a lot of storytelling and content around that at the moment.
Yeah, I think events can actually learn a lot from your example of Woolworths and also purpose driven. We've talked about that quite a lot in the last 3 episodes that we've done, that people aren't going to be looking, they don't just want something advertised in their face, or they don't just want to go to an event where they get colour thrown at them. They actually want to know that you align with their purpose. And because if they go to that event and they align with your purpose, the other people that go to that event align with the same purpose, so they all have something in common and they feel like this kind of you're in my tribe.
Yeah, and I wonder if also we're going to want to be using our time more wisely moving forward, and by participating in those kinds of experiences, you're actually actively doing something. So, you know, will we, you know, you see the sort of Celeste Barber concert, you know, it had a real purpose to it. It was entertainment. It's a bit of a win-win, because just by watching it, you feel like you're helping, even if you haven't actually donated any money. I just wonder whether we're reassessing the way we live our lives, and people are going to want every moment to count once they're back out in the world, or whether we'll just go back to sloppy ways. Just watch.
I really hope it's going to be purpose driven, but we shall see. CT, what's your thoughts on Woolworths and events, and because we can learn from that, surely?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's, when you hear it, I guess it sort of brings back those things. It's about looking outward, out of the industry, you know, for something that we can maybe take into the industry. So, like for with Duncan, you know, as an example, with Mesh, as something that has come across from the retail space and has been, you know, repurposed, but has been taken as a initial concept, but being able to give it an event application that is doing so many amazing things, is able to give us all of this powerful information. You know, when it's been applied to the event world, and so we're getting, you know, for flow dynamics and consumer behavior information. And as I said, it's really powerful information for an event manager, but also for sponsors and for merchandise sales and for overlays of, things in transport and all sorts of different things that can come out of that. And Duncan can correct me on the applications, but when I hear about it, talking about it, I can sort of see and hear, and the ways that it can maybe be used, and it's got so many fantastic applications. The Woolworths example, I find it really interesting. And if I think about that in the event space, it's for me, the events world is going to need. It's going to need us to guide it in the same way as Woolworths is guiding the public in how to, wipe your hands before you come in and get your trolley, or how to stay distanced away from each other. It's going to be important for us to educate, people going to events and show them, how this is going to now work in this space, and in the initial phase, how to act and the rules to follow, and make sure that we can continue events and get them kicked off and not get them shut down straight away.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, no, it did. And so looking at other markets, going to put this out there. So what new tech in other markets I'm going to ask you, Duncan, because you've been very quiet there and very patient. So sorry. And what other tech in other markets do you think that is exciting that's going on at the moment that we could maybe learn from or take and adjust?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of stuff kind of around. I mean, for me, the big thing here at the moment is kind of the 5G thing. Like, where does 5G take us in terms of content and ad event experiences? I think that's still a space kind of to be confirmed. Like, I think you can make a stadium experience better by integrating 5G technology, but will people necessarily want to be on their phone the whole time? I'm still the jury's out with that for me, but. And then seeing sort of some stuff like, is this AR's time to shine in terms of people aren't at the event? So is there like an AR experience that they can kind of put themselves into the event through that? Was kind of interesting for me, to kind of down to like some platform stuff where I came across a company the other day that like you could pull your event plans all into sort of one platform and build all your stuff out in there. So, those tools sort of start to become more and more valuable when you need to be looking at spacing and all that sort of stuff as well. So that's kind of what, out there for me is how some of these technologies now sort of come to the fore with, the way things are changing a little bit. Christie?
Sorry, I can hear.
Do you want me to jump in?
Am I supposed to talk?
No, I'm gonna let CT talk. Sorry, you go, CT.
Yeah. Well, I was going to touch on similar. It's in a similar way as Duncan. So, we've had an influx of things like, virtual reality and augmented reality. And when those things, with them potentially in the past, the network capabilities, particularly in Australia, possibly stunted these a little bit. So, these are sorts of things we were, looking at with CSIRO maybe 8 years ago, and thinking at the moment that we were looking to incorporate into our event experiences, but the technology wasn't sort of quite there. And so, these things are certainly still there and certainly still able to be used in a way that lost that little edge a little bit, but I think there's still great applications for them, and it'll be interesting to see how that sort of comes through. I think, obviously streaming and the online events, goes without saying, at the moment, and, with the new technology, it's making it really, cost effective and easy for people to be able to reach a really wide audience, which is fantastic. I was also thinking about things like RFID, which is certainly not new, but we're starting to see some really different uses, and also things like Bluetooth and NFC chips, and how those are being incorporated into wearables for events. So we're starting to see those things that maybe are floated around in different applications before coming through, differently now. But the one thing that I've been looking at that's making me, I won't say it's making
tell us what you're excited about.
Making me excited. One thing I have been looking at is facial recognition, and so what we're sort of seeing is at the moment is applications for self-check-in for registration and ticketing with facial recognition, which is going to obviously change the way we experience entry into events or entry into a marathon or anything like that. Is also being used, has applications anyway, to be used for risk and safety, for however you want to think of that. So, facial recognition of certain looks that could give us an indication of what potentially someone might be thinking, but obviously these are serious things that need to be considered.
Yeah,
So
I think going back from where Duncan is coming from before, and the video Duncan did with us as well, just about, his hope for the future is that technology advances, but it doesn't take away your privacy.
Well, so with this as well, with understanding that is also, it's has the potential to possibly map attendee emotions and also the engagement. So we can get a feeling for what people are, what are they interested in, what are they engaged in, what's happening, and it can interact. And potentially the event is going to evolve as that's happening, because we're seeing what people are into and what they're not. You can sort of see where some of these things might be able to go. Yeah,
so rather than a brand ambassador standing there asking people if it's how the,
well, it could be something as, for instance, if you have an application in a music festival and, something, people are interacting with something else is happening, the facial recognition is picking it up or they're not reacting. And so it's changing the show as it's going, maybe. So look, who knows how those things are going to go, but I think it's quite interesting and exciting to hear some of these things being looked at.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't seen this, but I feel like someone's making this as we speak, but how esports
hoverboard.
How esports has become so huge, and it's not necessarily going to take market share, but it might share a bit more of the market in the future. And or actually NRL going back in like 3 weeks time or 4 weeks time, where the spectators really want to be there, right? But a lot of the time there's also spectators that are in hospitality boxes, and those hospitality, a lot of them are hospitality agencies actually that specialize in that. And the opportunity that the general public are now so used to being on Skype that potentially there can be some sort of room that they go into that feels like a hospitality suite, and they get something delivered to their door for them to drink and eat and whatever. I think that's
the at-home VIP experience.
Yeah, like seeing that kind of opportunity in where our events are going and how we'll unfold, I think could be really exciting.
Yeah, look, it's interesting too. And as far as just thinking about what you said about these series, I was, about 20 years ago, I floated an idea to the V8s about a format for racing, and they quite politely knocked it back. And last night I was watching the E Series and just realised that idea could be fantastic for the E Series. So something that maybe didn't fit for actual V8s at the time. So I messaged my mate that's there still now and said, look, hey, that idea we talked about 20 years ago, it should be in the E Series. So it's something that potentially you're going to look at. I'm going to try and push it into the main game after that, maybe. But it's interesting how maybe something where, we might discount the E Series as it's a game, and it's not, as soon as we go back to being able to race properly, that's going to go by the wayside. But maybe this is a platform for us to be able to trial things also. Let's take it that way.
But just in general, maybe, as an industry, you could be prototyping experiences and ideas in digital and virtual experiences.
And why not? And see what the fans think of it. And if it works, then maybe it goes into real life, right?
Yeah, finding the right idea for, the right place for those ideas, and, timing is everything with that sort of stuff as well, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
We've just got a few minutes left. We've had some questions come through, which are great questions. I'm going to do the questions backwards. First of all, for all the panelists, with so many conferences being executed digitally, what is the best thing you've seen so far?
Besides this?
I'm guessing with conferences is, about webinars and panel casts and greater events digitally. So
the best thing for me is that all of them have catch-up sessions, so I can just log online when my kids are not hanging off me and look at the sessions. I've enjoyed the new, you walk into the foyer and go into the different rooms in the webinar sort of stuff. That's quite cool. But that's for me. That's the highlight. Christie, you got anything?
I don't feel like I have a good answer to this because I haven't attended any, to be honest. I've been sort of, like most people, super time poor. I'm more of a transcript after the fact kind of person often. But I think the thing that I have enjoyed the most in this new world of communication is just a really casual afternoon kind of, it's, a afternoon with my kids and a couple of families. And I know that's a bit personal, but it just made me think, like, if you can make these experiences effortless, that's when you can switch off and forget what you're doing and just feel like you're in the moment. And that's probably the thing that was the only time that's happened so far in, all these hours of video conferencing and whatnot. So
you've just made me think maybe not next week, but maybe the week after, we should just get everyone on in a different format, everyone that's also joining in, and we just have drinks. Maybe we just have drinks and chat.
Next week's going to be on House Party.
So another video platform where
Sam saying yay.
You're all sitting around the table. It's an interesting one as well.
I like that 70s show.
Whereas you're actually all sitting around, I'm sure you can change what the table is, but
it actually exists. That exists.
Yeah, I think so. There's I'll see if I can find a link to.
Cool. We'll post it up. I
was going to say backdrop. My island backdrops.
I can't get it working. I'm in tech and I can't get to the tech. I've got 3 different laptops. I can't make it work. I think it's something about being a parent.
I was on one with the.
Hello.
The event. I've got kangaroos.
Show off.
So I was on one with the Event Sustainability Alliance, and it was called Hop On, and you could go into this room and network, but it was like speed dating but networking, and it was really bizarre. You got 10 seconds to speak to someone random around the world, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. I haven't actually done it yet.
Yeah.
Isn't that chat roulette? No?
Yes, it actually is chat roulette. I forgot about that.
Probably lots of penises, I imagine.
They've taken that idea and they've put it in webinars. There you go. That's an example.
So we've just got one more question. Christie, this is for you. This is from Joel. He said, do you think we will ever reach the point where the consumer feels too overwhelmed by the volume of content, social media, podcasts, video, OTT platforms, traditional media? It is now such a saturated market. If so, could this have a negative effect on brand association?
I think we're there, Joel. I've got to be honest. I think, that there's just trillions more content than any one person needs or could ever come across. So I guess I don't know whether that will have a negative effect on brands. It definitely makes it harder to stand out and to get in front of your audiences and to make an impact. But I also think that the technology, and may I be the first person to use the expression AI, which I'm really proud of us that nobody brought it up, but I just did. But the way that we're able to use data and machine learning to deliver better content experiences and put the right content in front of people at the right time, that should continue to improve to a point. So I think the pressure is on brands to make better content, tell better stories, be more relevant, because it is just going to continue to get harder.
And that's been the case without the technology involved, but that's been the case over time anyway. It's been about creating the right event or the right project or the right whatever that is becoming that content, and so otherwise you are just another piece of content, right? Like it's still about the idea as well, and then
it's definitely the end of the year for events as well as content is going to be is that what you just said? Sorry, completely cut out. I'll just leave.
If you're
I'm not needed.
Get on your kangaroo and have to get.
That's probably a whole nother, Zoom call.
Yeah.
But, I think the way AI and machine learning is going to digest this and customize it for different users, and people will be a little bit more responsible probably with their how they consume content as well, and manage themselves a bit better, I think. Yeah,
I agree. Well, look, we've come up to the hour, and that went really, really quickly, but that was a great conversation. I hope that everyone that joined us and that follows on watching this got something out of it, and can actually see by looking at other industries and other trades, essentially, that we can innovate by looking around us. That's what we were hoping to get out of this. So thank you all for joining the conversation. You can join our Facebook group, which is the Shift PanelCast, and we will update you on what other panelists that we have. What?
Got another question.
Oh, we've got another question.
From Andreas.
Duncan, are you wearing a robe?
No, I'm disappointed that I wasn't now.
Are you wearing pants?
Yeah, I am wearing pants.
Right, this is getting
wearing pants, and the sun's almost up here now as well.
Yeah. Look, so to everyone, please send us your questions, ideas for panelists. We've really loved having all your feedback. And we're really looking to bring this community together of purpose-driven people that are looking for a really positive change. So please join us. Please pass this on. Thank you very much to our panelists tonight, Christie and Duncan and CT. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.